The night was heavy with rain, and the city lights blurred behind the streaks on his tinted car windows. David Lorenz, a millionaire known for his ruthless business instincts and cold efficiency, leaned back in his leather seat as his driver turned down an unfamiliar alley. He was on his way home from a charity gala when he caught sight of something that made his heart skip a beat. A faint flicker of movement among the trash piles, a hunched figure clutching a small boy in her arms, both drenched and trembling. For reasons he couldn't explain, he told the driver to stop. That was the moment everything changed. David stepped out, the rain soaking his suit instantly. His polished shoes squelched in the mud as he approached the figures. The woman slowly looked up, her eyes wide with fear and disbelief. David froze. It was Maria, his maid who had disappeared 2 months ago without warning. He had thought she'd simply quit, maybe found a better job. But here she was, sitting in the cold filth of a city dump, holding her sleeping son close to her chest. "Maria?" His voice cracked through the storm. What are you doing here?" Her lips trembled as she tried to stand, but her body was weak. "Mr. Lorenz, please go. You shouldn't see us like this." He didn't move. His expensive coat was already soaked through, but he didn't care. "Where's your home?" Maria shook her head, tears mixing with the rain. "We don't have one anymore." That night, David made a decision that no one who knew him would have believed possible. He opened the car door, helped Maria and her son inside, and told his driver to take them to his mansion. As the car pulled away, David looked at her reflection in the window, the quiet, broken woman who had once filled his house with warmth and laughter. He remembered how her little boy, Leo, would run down the hallway chasing his reflection on the marble floors, giggling like sunlight. And now they looked like they hadn't eaten in days. Something deep inside him stirred, a guilt he didn't yet understand. When they arrived at his mansion, the staff froze in disbelief. Maria's clothes were torn, her son's small hands clutched at her coat. David ordered fresh clothes, food, and a doctor. He didn't explain why. Not yet. Later that night, when the house had quieted down and the rain had stopped, Maria told him everything. Her husband, who had been missing for years, had returned, drunk, violent, and desperate. He sold everything she had, including the little jewelry she'd saved from her late mother. When she tried to escape with Leo, he chased her, and they ended up on the streets. She'd been hiding ever since, afraid to ask anyone for help, ashamed of what her life had become. David sat in silence, his chest tightening with every word. He'd been so absorbed in his world of power and numbers that he hadn't even noticed when the kindest person in his house vanished. He had paid her wages, yes, but never once asked if she was happy, if she had anyone to help her. She had been invisible to him. Until tonight. When Maria fell asleep in the guest room, David stood at the door for a long time, watching over her and Leo. He realized then that his wealth meant nothing if he couldn't use it to fix what was broken. And for the first time in years, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long while. Purpose. The next morning, sunlight filled the mansion, but the warmth didn't reach David's heart. He had spent the night thinking, replaying her words, her tears, and her son's quiet whimpers. He called his assistant and canceled all his meetings. The company could wait. This was more important. When Maria woke, she found David in the kitchen, awkwardly trying to make breakfast. He looked up, half smiling. "I burned the toast," he admitted, and she laughed softly, the first sound of light he'd heard from her since that night. But beneath that smile, pain lingered. Maria tried to thank him, but he stopped her. "You don't owe me anything," he said quietly. "I owe you." He helped her find a safe place to stay, a counselor to talk to, and a lawyer to handle the abuse case against her husband. But when he tried to offer her money, she refused. "I just want a chance to start again," she said, and that's when David did something even he didn't expect. He offered her a job, not as a maid, but as a manager in his company's new community outreach division. "You know what struggle looks like," he said. "I don't. Help me build something that matters." Maria hesitated, her hands trembling. "You trust me with that?" He nodded. "You've already proven what kind of person you are." "I only wish I'd seen it sooner." Months passed. Under Maria's leadership, David's company began sponsoring shelters, food programs, and safe houses for women and children in crisis. Leo started attending school again, and every Friday, David would pick him up personally. The boy would always run into his arms, calling him Uncle David, a sound that melted whatever ice had been left in his heart. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, Maria stood beside David on the office balcony. "Do you ever regret finding us that night?" she asked softly. David looked at her, then out at the glowing horizon. "Regret?" He smiled faintly. "That night didn't ruin my life, it saved it." Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they weren't from pain. They were from gratitude. David had found more than his maid and her son that night. He had found his humanity, the part of him he'd buried beneath years of greed and success. And for the first time in his life, he realized that wealth wasn't about what you own. It was about who you lift up when they've fallen. That lesson stayed with him forever. And whenever he saw a storm outside his window, he would remember the night he stopped his car in the rain, and how a single act of compassion had changed not just one life, but 3.